With a bit of free time on my hands and a desire for a creative outlet, I've decided to try my hand at making my own Paladarium, which is obviously a form of aquarium. Luckily, I've had some glass sitting around for about 3.5 years collecting dust, so I was good to go to start, and let's get it going. A Paladarium is halfway between an aquarium, which is full of water, and a terrarium, which has no water, so it's kind of at the waterline or halfway point, half out, half in. So it's going to be a pretty fun little project. The process of cutting glass is pretty straightforward. I just marked it to see which side I wanted to keep, measured on both sides. I used a square to make sure my cuts would be at 90 degrees. And then I dipped it with kerosene. I don't know why we need to do this, but you do. And then just measure it up and give it a nice little cut with the line cutter. For those of you curious as to what it sounds like, here you go. For those of you that love the sound of fingernails scraping on the chalkboard, I'm sure you loved that as well. After that is pretty much a lot more of the same. Measuring, marking, measuring again, scoring the glass with the glass cutter, and then just tapping it to break it off until all the pieces were done. Now the fun part of actually seeing it come together, actually seeing the pieces kind of how they fit, and I was making sure that all the overlaps would be fine. The glass is 5 millimeters thick, so I wanted to make sure that everything would actually fit together before I made the final cuts. Now back in Bali, it's time to unpack, make sure it all made it here in one piece, make sure none of the glass broke. So I'm going to give it a quick wash in white vinegar, get all the shards off, all the sanding off, and try putting it back together again, making sure I remember how it's done before I start taping. The whole idea of taping the edges is to make sure that when it finally comes time to actually siliconing, that I'm not over siliconing the edges or having it run all over the glass. Turns out I made an absolute horrible job of this and made a mess, which led to me having to clean it for about 3 hours. It's just your average everyday silicone glue, which you can find at any hardware store. And so what I did is I just used the theory of more silicone would be better. So did a firm base of silicone, and then I did it on both sides to get the sides together. I jimmied up this little piece of wood as a base for 90-degree angles, so I didn't have the glass fall down, smash all over the place. Already dropped it a few times, and then I just kept on siliconing before my camera angle suddenly changed because I had a certain somebody knock it to the ground. So when I got back up and rolling, I just kept on siliconing. I did a line on the inside edges as well. I just really didn't want any leaks. So after I finished this, turns out I had a bunch of silicone left, and so upon going inside, Loren had me redo the kitchen sink. So now we're leak-proof here as well. So after 24 hours of letting the silicone dry, decided it was time to take the tape off, see how miserable of a job I had done, getting silicone all over the glass, and then cut it away from the base before giving it its first water test to see if it was watertight. After making a mess of the outside test, I decided to move it inside, a bit more of a controlled environment and not so hot. But so I filled it up again, and then it was just a waiting game, just waiting to see, make sure there's no leaks, and then in my impatience, decided to start trying to clean it here, and then made a mess here instead. Now that it was watertight, it was just time to clean off my silicone job and get all the smudges and fingerprints off the side. Tried vinegar, tried a sponge, ended up just being a razor blade and some elbow grease. A couple hours of doing that, and a beautiful Paladarium in the end. Gonna hopefully plant it up next week.